It just shakes you up so deeply that you know you'll never be the same.
We look strikingly similar, and I'm like, I would never say that to my son. And it was just a very quick reminder to me that a lot of our internal thinking, albeit happening real time, isn't real. There is a light at the end of the tunnel, but you've got to find a guide.
So, welcome back to Life by the Horns, all bull and no bullshit. So, let's go. So guys, you guys ever had a weekend where it just shakes you up so deeply that you know you'll never be the same? For Dustin, that weekend just happened. No real headlines, no stage, no cameras, nothing crazy, just a quiet house, and 90 hours that pulled him face to face with everything he'd been running from. So today, Dustin, we're going to talk about the house on Woodruff Place. How are you today, man?
I'm well. How are you?
I can't complain, man. Can't complain. Excited about chatting with you today. So before we talk about what happened inside that house, I want to start with what led you there. So before the retreat even came up, what was going on? What was life like? And what brought you to just going on this retreat thing you went on this weekend?
How far back do you want to go?
Oh, Jesus, like,
I mean,
I'm sure
that could be the whole podcast right there.
Yeah, I'm sure we might get that deep, but just kind of in the weeks leading up or months leading up to it, what was life like?
Oh man, I mean, much the same, for me, I guess, as everybody else, just a whirlwind of different thoughts and emotions. And some know that I started investing in more of like a transformational type coach, which is what I'll call it, and was really just looking for what I thought were going to be kind of some tools and frameworks and whatnot to help me figure out this. It seemed like repeated season of life that I was living over and over again, and that's not what I got. So for someone who's mildly a control freak, there was times leading up where I'm just like, what the fuck are we doing? Like, and even my wife a couple months back had, made a comment that it seemed like you were making some great progress and then you've kind of stalled. And then this kind of happened. So there was an announcement that, we were going to do this. It was called a Recode retreat, which was kind of a mastermind for the folks that were in my coach's mastermind and the one-on-ones. And normally I politely decline these type of things. Like I've even had, previous coaches in different spaces that have been like, hey, come to this mastermind. It's in Cancun. We'll take care of everything. You just got to pay for your flight. Who the fuck wouldn't go to Cancun to go hang out with a bunch of really amazing people for free?
Right.
This guy. And so it was just interesting when it happened. I think for a split second, I thought about what the decline would look like. And then I just bought the ticket and ran with it.
Yeah. You said you typically decline things like this. Why is that?
I was lying to myself saying it was coming from a place of humility. And it honestly wasn't until this retreat that I realized that I was exceptionally terrible at receiving gifts, really good at giving them. And it gives me so much joy to do so, but terrible at receiving them. So, even though this was something that was paid for with some respect, it was also supposed to be, a blessing onto me as long as I did the work within it. And I've always just really, for whatever reason, struggled at, when people give me something, whether it be a card, a gift, whatever, like I don't like to open it in front of them. I don't want them to see me emotional. Heaven forbid it's a terrible gift and you have to fake it. And so generally, like I would take that stuff, even in my own household, and I'd, be like, oh, thank you so much. And then I would, put it in my book bag and go to work, and then I'd read it in the parking lot or something. And, but again, I learned a lot about that as well this weekend, and that kind of, character thing that I had.
Yeah. So what made you say yes this time versus?
I don't know.
No idea.
No, I don't know. I think that I almost feel like my soul knew that I needed to do it before I even agreed to it. I was just kind of like, yeah, like this is happening. This is a part of the process. Okay, we're doing this thing. And then I remember going to buy the ticket to fly up to Indianapolis, and then I put it off for a week. And then for whatever reason, like the next Friday, I was just like, all right, we're here and we're buying the ticket and everything's good. And I even laughed and talking with my coach. He was like, he was like, surprisingly, I didn't really have to convince you to come to this thing. You just kind of said, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, as surprising it is for you, it was also equally as surprising to me.
Yeah. Were you, so during that time, so you say yes, and obviously there's time in between, when you, when you said yes and when you go, what were you feeling? Was it excitement, nervous, or you just kind of blah? You don't know what to expect. What were you feeling?
Yeah, there was no itinerary. So there was some anxiety that came with that. Goes back to that mild control freak. It's like, okay, what are we doing? What can I prepare for? I want to show up ready.
Mm-hmm.
And, we had a call, kind of like a meet and greet prior to going up there. And I remember jumping into the call and looking at everybody, and I'm like, oh my God, everybody is so different from me,
Mm-hmm.
which honestly made me feel more uncomfortable going into it. It was like, oh, it's not a bunch of, business owners that look and act just like me, which is probably a great thing. And I'm just like, man, it's just everybody's so fucking different.
Mm.
I think even on our call, I had made a joke and nobody laughed, and I was like, oh fuck,
It's
here
gonna
we
be
go.
terrible.
Yeah, because humor for me is a good way to diffuse heavy situations. And
Mm.
yeah, nobody laughed, and I was just like, well, it is what it is. So
Yeah. So what did you think was going to happen? So after that, you have this meeting. So leading up to that, what did you think was going to happen? Were you expecting like some kind of, okay, this is going to be like strategy, or were you really thinking like it was going to be some in-depth soul work or
I
something?
had no idea, but I do know. This is funny. My wife and I, the night before I went up there, we were watching this show on Netflix called Wayward. And in one of the episodes, they I forget what they call. Oh, they call it the hot seat, and they put somebody in the middle, and they let everybody around the room go and basically just drill them on anything.
Mm.
And then you're just supposed to thank them for the feedback. And then all of a sudden, all the people gathered around them, and they're like doing this weird hugging, moving around type thing. And Amanda and I are looking at each other, and I'm like, I swear to fuck, if this is what I'm about to go do, I'm done. Like, there's no way. And so I had messaged my coach the morning of and was like, man, this is so funny that we watched this last night. And I hope to God this is not what we're doing. And he didn't really say yes or no. He was just like, it's interesting how you found that, and it just kind of showed up in your life right before this. And I'm like, all right, well, we didn't confirm or deny that this is going to happen. So here we go.
That's too funny, man. So when so you finally get to this, so you've got this kind of anxiety leading into the weekend. Um, Talk to me about arriving. Like, what was it like, leading up to, from when you left and when you got there? What was that like for you?
It was different in the best of ways. So in buying the ticket and making the commitment to go and not really question a lot, for whatever reason, I felt really grounded in the decision and was really looking forward to whatever it was. And, I planned out my day to make sure I got, my 2 rounds of exercise in before I got on the plane. I had to pace my water accordingly because I'm like, man, I don't want to have to pee like a racehorse on the plane. And I always choose a window seat. And I'm like, I don't want to just be more than I already am an inconvenience because I'm not the smallest guy. So I already take the armrest, and then heaven forbid I got to tell you guys, hey, please excuse me, I need to go to the bathroom. So I I got to the airport. I was, and I hate the Atlanta airport for the record. It's chaotic as hell. And there's some days that you get there and you can literally park your car and get through security in 25 minutes. There's other days that it takes 2 hours. And I gave myself enough of a runway, but not too much where I was going to have to sit at the terminal for an hour and a half. And everything just seemed like it was working exceptionally smoothly. I had rented a car via Turo, which I'd never done before because I hate this whole. Normally we use Hertz, and I just like it's like, oh, go choose the one you want, and you get out there, and I hate sitting in the fucking line to you just got off a plane. I don't like getting the car. It's just inconvenient as hell. So I was like, I'll try something new, and this way I could pick what I wanted to drive. So I picked something really familiar to me. I initially wanted to get something really badass, and it was just way too expensive to make any sense. I'm like, I'm only going to use this to drive to the gym and the grocery store. So, I rent the car. Never been to the Indianapolis airport before. The flight was super short. Get off the plane. My bags are there. Grab my bags. Go to the 5th level, and the guy I rented the car from was super great. The directions were great. Getting in the car was relatively simple. I ended up getting a Tesla, and my wife has one, and I'm used to just using the phone app, and it just knows when you're there and you can open it. I've never used the key fob. So I'm sitting here trying to do what it says, and the door's not unlocking. I'm like, God dang it. But I finally get in, get comfortable. I've got an hour and a half until check-in, and I had kind of alluded to, or I had told my coach, like, I'm going to be early. If you need help, let me know. And he was like, nope, we're good. We'll see you at 6. So to me, that was a hard line. Yeah. I'm like, I have an hour and a half to kill. So I drove to the north end of Indy. So the house was basically downtown. So I drove to the north end, went to the grocery store, got all the things I thought I needed, left. And at this point, I had about an hour to go. Didn't want to just sit in the car. I was hungry. Went to a restaurant, ate by myself, which is not something I normally do. And I actually sat next to 3 cops, and I've got nothing to, like, they don't make me feel a way, but I also look a certain way. Right. So there's a mild bit of profiling or bias that's associated with it. So sat next to these guys, ate my food, and normally I'm in a rush if I'm doing anything by myself, because I always have these weird thoughts that people are like, man, what is this guy doing? Oh man, he must be so lonely. And, so then you sit here and you doom scroll and shit to make it look like you're busy. No, I just sat there and I ate my food and finally finished, got up, got in the car, made my way down to the house. Was about a half hour early, and it was just kind of watching the busyness of the house as my coach. I saw him, helping prep things. There was somebody there cleaning. There were multiple cars in the driveway. And you could really see that they were putting a lot of effort into this, and I just sat there and was like, man, just enjoy the moment. Don't fire off a ton of emails. You don't need to call anyone right now. You don't need to be doing a bunch of social posting. Like, just be. And so I sat there and just marveled, honestly, at all the houses that were around. So this neighborhood was established in 1872. The house was built in 1898. There were basically 3 main streets to the neighborhood, and then a side street that connected everything. There were fountains at every intersection. Some of the homes were renovated and, absolutely immaculate. Other ones were barely standing the test of time. There were trees there that were just larger than life. And I was just observing. And, this control freak in me was like, at 6 o'clock on the dot, that's when you're allowed to get out of the car. And one of the ladies that I had seen on the call on Monday, Allie, she pulls in the driveway like she owns it. And it's so funny, the things that I think. My first thought was, Allie, Neil said park in the street. We're not allowed to park in the driveway. She's also 6 minutes early. She gets out of the car, goes to the front door, lets herself in. And I'm like, man, what it would be or feel like to just be like you own the motherfucker, and, forget the rules. So she goes in. I see she comes back outside with Celeste. They grab Allie's bags. They go back in, and I'm like, all right, like, I guess it's okay now. And then another car pulled in behind me, presumably an Uber. Another gentleman gets out who I'd also seen on the call. And I'm like, okay, we're good. So I grab my stuff. Him and I say hi. I think we were both in so many ways cut from the same cloth. I knew a little bit about him ahead of time. I think we were both like polite, but also feeling this level of anxiety, which is like, what the fuck did we get ourselves into? Mm-hmm. And, we made our way in the house. Celeste showed us to our rooms. And I mean, the house was just, it reminded me of my grandmother's home, just exponentially bigger. It was so old and had so much character. And I mean, I think the place had like 11 bedrooms or so in it, multiple dining rooms. And, we made our way upstairs, and I was just like, well, this is it for the next couple of days. And um, a lot of times in those situations, or at like, corporate conferences and that kind of stuff, like once you find your hotel room, I kind of just stay there. Interacting with a bunch of new people and stuff is, for me, is an energy suck. But I was like, no, like that's not, the intention of being here. I don't even know what the intention is, but I'm going to go downstairs and, try to be cordial. So I unpacked my groceries, which was a whole thing too. So they had planned all the meals for everybody, but of course I'm the oddball doing 75 hard, and there's a lot of stuff I couldn't eat. So I was like, I really need some refrigerator space, which was a whole thing. They're like, it's kind of maxed out. So I carved out a little section and got some stuff I could put in the freezer too. And just for whatever reason, I didn't have this level of anxiety I normally do when you're going into a situation which is unknown. I felt grounded and comfortable, which was very unique.
Yeah, man, it's it's interesting as you walk through this whole thing. Everything that you were doing seemed like totally different from like the normal you. You know what I mean? Like, you're just chilling. You're taking in stuff and paying attention to all these things. And then normally you would kind of go into your room and chill and probably, start working or something like that. But like, I'm just wondering, like, why was there anything going on in your head, like where you were like, it's just weird, like that during this whole period, like you're doing the total opposite of what you would normally do.
The word intentional, and then in the thought about just being, were really important to me. I didn't want to do what I normally do, which is, kind of sidetrack yourself with busy work. I mean, even that day, I mean, or I guess it was the following day this was going to happen, but we had decided to let a team member go. I was the one that was going to have to update some credentials because only I had, access to a certain level. And as important as it was to update these credentials, I didn't get to it until 1:30 in the morning on Monday. Because I had made it a point that I didn't want anything to distract me from what was right in front of me. And so I really just, and I think that happens to all of us all the time. Like, we wake up in the morning, the first thing we do is we grab our phone, we start going through social media and emails. And all it takes is one email that you perceive as not great from somebody to totally fucking jar your nervous system right out the gate and can, potentially fuck up your whole day. And so I was just trying to be extraordinarily mindful to not do that. I mean, even to the point I took it to a relative extreme where, I mean, even my own wife and I only talked to her on the phone 2 times in 5 days because I was like, I just want to be. And I also know the curiosity from an outsider's perspective, which is, what's going on. And it was like, and I'm sure we'll get to this later, but I was like, I don't know how to explain this to somebody because I don't know what I'm walking into. And then while I was there and I started experiencing everything, to try to explain it verbally to somebody, I'm like, okay, do you have 3 hours? Because that's what it's going to take. And also assuming your head's going to be all over the place, you're still not going to get it.
Right. So let's talk about that. Like, let's dive into the experience. When did it, at what point did something shift for you? Like in the weekend, like or just walk me through like the first night. What went on then? Maybe a conversation and exercise. Talk me through what went down and what shifted.
So, I mean, the first night was very casual. It was just an opportunity for really everybody to fly in, get settled, and then just kind of be with each other. And so the first night, there was a lot of like congregation inside of the kitchen, the dining room, living room, as one would expect. There were already some kind of cliques that had already been established because the mastermind group, they meet every week. They knew each other online. So you could see the familiarity there. For a lot of us that were one-on-one, you could tell we felt a little bit more isolated, which is normal. Gotcha. This was not, something that anyone was trying to create. That's just the reality of people, right? You're going to navigate, or, you're going to make your way to the people that you already feel the most connected with. So, I knew that was going on. But then once everybody was there, the first thing we did was, we gathered around the dining room, and this was just so funny. So we gathered around the dining room, and then we're told to spread out. And then we were told to open our arms wide. And I'm like, what the fuck? And the whole idea was just take up space.
Hmm.
And then it was like, you know what? Just move a little freely. Let's move our arms side to side. I knocked over a fucking lamp right away. And
Of course.
yeah, and I'm like, okay, here's me trying to do what we're supposed to do, and I'm already breaking shit. And so then, Neil, we laughed, and he's like, yeah, leave it to Dustin, the guy with this monstrous wingspan, to knock something over. And it was a joke, but also internally, I'm like, yeah, I mean, this is how I feel all the time. Like, one part of me wanted to, go from this 145-pound string bean when I was young to this 250-pound frame. But also with that, I bump into something, I'm probably going to wreck it.
Mm-hmm.
And, and how I travel on planes and stuff, I choose seats for a certain reason, to not be this big, dense obstruction. I, choose to limit my water intake before I get on the plane, so I don't ask people to, excuse me so they can get out of I try to always make people feel as comfortable. So I'm constantly apologizing for myself. So, we go and do this exercise, and we sit down, and it was just like, well, how did this make everybody feel? Well, I mean, the vast majority, if not everybody, felt awkward. And then Neil was like, guys, like, when you're a kid, you unapologetically take up space. They run through the house, they jump on the couch and all this stuff. And it's not until adults tell you, don't do that, you need to apologize, you need to basically shrink, that you learn that that's what you should do. And then what happens when we're adults, we tell our kids the same thing. And so, in sitting there, I'm sitting across from this gentleman, James, and then we just talked about kind of like the initial, that very simple exercise and just how we were feeling. And he mentions that he felt kind of anxious, and he felt kind of out of place. And as he's saying this, and I'm looking at this guy, and this guy's probably 6 foot, 6'1", clearly works out, 50-year-old gentleman that, doesn't look like your average 50-year-old in a good way. And he says these things, and I was just like, yeah, me too. And he is like, what? I could never imagine that you would feel anxious in an environment or out of place. And other people were like, yeah. And I'm like, no, I wear the same feelings, I promise. And so it was just interesting to see, A, how somebody felt, and then B, other people's perception of you. And it was just a very quick reminder to me that a lot of our internal thinking, albeit happening real time, isn't real. It's just a reaction based off of things that we've been conditioned and told for such a period of time. We are the ones that make it real in our own heads. But is it truth, or is it just a reaction? And so that was one of the things that, through the entire course of this, that I was really trying to navigate through. And we may have done one or two other things that night. I don't really recall, but it was an interesting moment to just be, in my words, I used a couple of times there, obtuse, and be okay with it.
So you're taking up space, and you're knocking over the lamps. And so is this something like that first night, after you go through those first exercises, and you have these conversations with people, and they're like, oh, I would never, like, did something shift for you there? Or like, where were you after that whole exercise?
No. So at some point thereafter, I had to make dinner.
Mm-hmm.
And so everybody else was eating. I think they had like paninis or something. And I remember I took one apart, and I ate the ham out of it, and then threw everything else away. And I was like, no, I need to make like some real food. So I start cooking, and there was the videographer there, Grant, was in the kitchen, and one or two other people, and they were interested in the fact that I was cooking. and then also what I was cooking. And then at one point, Grant goes, "Man, are you a bodybuilder?" And I just kind of laughed and I'm like, "No, man, I'm not." And like, "You're not really a bodybuilder unless you've competed on stage, never done it, haven't really had the desire." But do I follow a lot of what a bodybuilder would do? Absolutely. So we started talking about 75 hard a little bit, and then other people were, just intrigued and listening and why I've done it so many times and everything else. And it was just interesting because for a moment, I felt like I was actually seen and heard versus just like, "Oh yeah, there's that guy cooking, cool." Like they were actually intrigued in conversation. And even Celeste at one point, he was like, "Hey, did you bring all your supplements with you?" And I'm like, "Well, I brought some things, other things I couldn't bring with me. I packed way more than I thought I was going to." So I'm like, "I didn't bring protein powder or creatine or anything." And then Celeste was like, "Well, I've got some at the house, I'll just bring it tomorrow for you." And I was like, "Wow, that's very nice." And then, Celeste's like, "Well, will you actually use it though?" I'm like, "I don't know anybody in the athletic community that would not take free protein or creatine or pre-workout. So absolutely."
Right.
And so yeah, it was just this interesting dynamic where all of a sudden you're implanted in this house of complete strangers that have no idea who you are, that were actually listening to you, not distracted by their phones. And there was no rule like, hey, there was no like, "Oh, you can't be on your phones," anything like that. We had some very basic, house rules. Um, and people just seemed to care, and they were very intentional. And it just felt like it was my first thought of this through this experience that, holy shit, this is utopia.
Hmm.
I'm in this like kind of like encapsulation of real humanity and deep connection that you normally don't have.
Your business isn't stuck because of the economy or your competitors. Let's be real. It's stuck because you're still operating when you should be leading. You become the manager, the bottleneck, and the guy who thinks delegating means sending one more Slack message. And here's the kicker. Most coaching programs don't actually help. They're full of hype, delivered by people who've been so far removed from the battlefield, they're basically giving war advice from a vacation in Cabo. You leave inspired for about 48 hours, then what? No accountability, no measurement, no change. That's why we built Limitless Leaders. Weekly live coaching where the rubber meets the road. Monthly one-on-one sessions you can actually implement. And a private network of owners who know exactly what you're going through because they're living it too. It's practical, it's personal, and it works. The investment is small, the return is massive, and the relationships game-changing. We don't build hype, we build leaders. So join us at limitless.lifebythehorns.com because leaders aren't born, they're built, and it's time to build you.
Yeah, that's cool, man. And to think you went in like your first, like from that first anxious thought when you met them all, and you were like, "Oh, this is going to be, they're all totally different from me." And then they come into the experience and like, you're like, "Wow, like these people see me." That's interesting, man. So that's the first day. What was that night like after? I mean, because obviously you're taking up space. You're also on 75 hard, so like you're cooking your own meals, so you're kind of standing out. And then you go to bed, and then what happens the next day?
Yeah, I went to bed and I learned the first night that I hate soft beds. The thing had like some big padded thing on it, and the pillows were ultra fluffy, which I think, probably 95% of people like, that sounds amazing. No, for me, I like extremely firm bed, low profile pillow. Like I'd be fine without a pillow.
Hey.
And so, but anyway, I sleep, through the night. The house is because it's very old, it's very loud.
Mhm.
Like you could hear everything, all wooden floors, every creak, every time someone had to go to the bathroom. Of course, my room was right next to both the bathrooms on the third level. But I slept through the night. I got up the next day, decided to go do cardio right away. I really enjoyed it. Now, being a creature of habit and control, I made one lap around the main street, which took me, I think, 18 minutes. And then I was like, well, I've got to make another one. And then I got to do a partial one. So I ended up making my way to the gas station, came back up, went to the house. Now everybody's starting to get up at this point. I've already worked out. I'm now making my breakfast, which it's so funny, my breakfast compared to most people. Like most people eat a Danish or a pastry or something. And they had made some like salsa eggs, some, I think, turkey sausage and something else, which technically I could have ate. But I really prefer the same thing just because I think my body just reacts to it really well. It's back to the control thing. And so, I make my eggs. I made steak. I had avocado, some just plain potato. And it's just massive mound of food. And people are like, oh my God, I barely eat that much in a day. And I'm just like, yeah, this is just meal one. Like I got 4 or 5 more of these to go. And we ate our food, and then we finally made it to I don't know if we did I don't know if we did living room or dining room first that day, but then just sat down and just started discussing the prior activity from the other day, the taking up space and how it made us feel. And then we started navigating through some impact and fulfillment exercises, but it just felt comfortable. Yeah, it was just interesting to just everybody, no one wore a mask. I mean, everybody was in freaking sweatpants and shit. Like there was no getting dressed up for the day in large for most. There was no, I got to put on a bunch of makeup or anything. Then like that didn't exist. Everyone just felt comfortable around a bunch of strangers.
Interesting. So, what? I mean, every kind of retreat or something like this, when you have a big experience, there's a mirror or something like like what did the mirror? I mean, what was that moment for you where like it just something hit you? What was the shift? Like what happened? Um, what did you learn about yourself that you didn't see clearly before? What was that moment in the journey or the trip?
Well, I mean, there was more than one, but as we made it through, as we were making it through the first full day, James ended up being my partner, which honestly was a gentleman when we did the Monday call that I just, for whatever reason, and I hate to say this, but it's just the reality. People have biases, and we make, based off these biases, we make these assumptions. And I just assumed that James and I were not the same. Like we were not going to mesh. But then after the first day, in a little bit of dialogue, Neil came up to me and said, hey, so interesting that you said that you two have quite a bit in common. I actually paired him with you prior to the retreat. And I'm like, interesting. So we were doing exercises and stuff together, and we're at 2 completely different places in our life. James is a little bit older. He actually decided to take a job instead of, do his own thing for a period of time. As he's kind of going, he's using the job kind of as a bridge, so to speak, between where he was to where he wants to go. He put a timeline on it, which I thought was also, unique, and not in a bad way. And so, we had different experiences in life. We live in different places and everything else, but there was a lot of common ground. And I really enjoyed our conversations, but I still hadn't had like a big moment per se yet. And so I don't know if this was before or after I ate, because there's another story there. I think it was before, but we were told to, after a bunch of exercises through the day, go back to our journal and then write down all the intrusive thoughts that we have that are based just negative thoughts. And I was like, man, I feel so grounded and so good. Like I don't feel like I've had these in quite some time. Like I'm fine. And I was like, all right, I'll play along. And I went and sat down, and I'm just sitting there and the music's going on, and I'm like, all right, whatever, this is what it is. I'll write some shit down. And then as soon as I started, it just kept going and going and going. And I'm like, are you supposed to fill up an entire page? Because I'm filling up an entire page. And then it went to a second page and then a third page. And I'm like, oh my God, like, why in the fuck do we say this kind of shit to ourselves? And so, we finished writing, and you could feel the energy was just, it was like this weird, somber, like oxygen had gotten stripped from the room type deal. And then, so we were asked to then stand up and then, just go find a place where we had space. And so we were all over the main floor. And then Neil was like, I'm going to turn on some music, and I'm going to turn it up very loud. And then I'm going to ask you to look at your journal and then start reciting these things that you wrote down aloud. And I'm in my head, I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, why in the hell would we do that? We went from all this positive energy to this, like, this is wild, but hey, I'm here. Let's play along. Mm-hmm. And so the music turns on, and I think it was an Evanescence song. And, you start saying this stuff, and even though you're, in your own little bubble, I could see everybody else was feeling the same way. And you couldn't hear anything anybody was saying, which was the point. But, we just keep saying this shit over and over. And then the song plays again, and I'm like, oh my God. And then finally Neil's like, I want you guys to hold out your hand, and then we're going to place something in your hand, which we want you to hold on to, and then just keep saying these things. And I'm like, okay, this is fucking weird. And hold out my hand. I get something put in my hand, which felt like a ruler. And I'm like, oh, I know what's about to happen. We're going to finish, and I'm going to look, and then we're going to say that this is all a lie. And you're going to take the ruler and break it over your knee and say, fuck these terrible words. They're not real. So the song finishes up, told to open our eyes. I look, and I don't have a ruler in my hand. I have a paint stick from Home Depot. Mm-hmm. And at the top of the paint stick is a picture of me when I was 5 with my two cousins. One of them, exceptional guy, somebody I hugely admire. And then the other one, unfortunately, had committed suicide years back. And then there's me in the middle, and I'm wearing a cowboy hat, and I've got these black and white boots on, sitting in front of my grandparents' house, which was ironic because it was very similar to the house we were in. And I'm hugely paraphrasing, but it was like, you would never say these types of words to somebody that you love. Like, how dare us say these things to that little boy or that little girl? And the reality is, a lot of these words and things that we say are just reactions to our environments, which are built on, unfortunately, a belief system that we've created. And this little boy or this little girl is just trying to keep you safe. And albeit all this stuff is super negative, like when your belief system is hugely wired around keeping you safe, things that aren't real, and you start thinking these things, you'll find evidence for it, which helps compound how real the belief system feels. And so as I started kind of going through all these things I was saying, I was like, I would never say that to that little boy. And then, my son and I have the same name. We look his hair color is a little bit lighter, but, we look strikingly similar. And I'm like, I would never say that to my son. And, we were just supposed to sit with it and basically, in some capacity be thankful, for the fact that we're trying to keep ourselves safe and these words are keeping us small, but also own the fact that we're the adult in the situation and we got this. And to tell that little boy or that little girl that it's okay. Like, we're going to take care of you and we're not going to let that bad shit happen. And then we were just basically told to, when we felt ready, settle in the living room. And we all did. And you could just see it on everybody. Like, everybody was wearing this just massive amount of sadness, shame, disappointment, you name it. And all that said to me was, I have no idea what you were saying to yourself, but I'm pretty sure it was the same stuff I was saying to myself in some capacity. And I also barely know all of you guys, but it's not true. And so it was an extremely, extremely heavy moment. And I mean, something I'll never forget.
Was it, do you feel like that was like more pain that you were feeling after that, or were you feeling a little bit freer after that? Or
initially pain, for sure. Pain and then shame. And then, you know, after sitting with it for a little bit and making this commitment to this little guy, which is just, you know, me in a bigger meat suit, like, no, I've got you, and we're not going to continue to pour this bullshit, you know, into our thoughts and everything else. And so I remember, you know, shortly after that, was the first time I called my wife, and I actually, dinner time had come, and I was like, you know, and I had not went and done cardio at lunch because I kind of wanted to be with everybody. So I knew I was going to have to do it in the evening. So I went and did my cardio in the evening, and I got back, and they had made like rice, some sort of like Indian chicken and something else. And I was like, oh, I can eat this. And I came back from doing cardio, and all the food was gone. And I remember my first knee-jerk reaction was, fuck all you guys. And I asked Neil, I'm like, dude, is there any food left? And he was like, no. And I was like, okay, great. He's like, well, I mean, we could order you something. And I'm like, and then he stopped himself. He's like, but you won't be able to eat it anyway. And I was like, well, I guess I'll just have to run to the store, which I was initially very frustrated with. I never shared this with any of them. I was very frustrated with, but as I left, I called Amanda, and I was glad that I had a moment to call her. And I'm driving. I shared what we had just done, and Amanda was like, oh my God, like I couldn't imagine. And I'm like, yeah. And I was like, and then listen to this shit. I did my cardio, and I came back, and they ate all the food. And she was like, oh, well, that sucks. And she's like, well, I mean, to be fair, did you ask them, like, or tell them that you were going to eat with them? Because you have made it a point to make all your own meals. I'm like, all right, touche. You're right. Why would I think they're going to save me food if I never eat it anyway? So I drove to Whole Foods, because it was actually the only like decent grocery store that was close. And I remember I realized I was actually making my way into downtown Indianapolis, and I'm like, oh God, like I hate being in places I don't know, but heaven forbid, like downtown. And I'm like, I'm going to have to parallel park. I hate parallel parking, not because I don't know how to do it, because I don't like taking up space. I don't like stopping traffic and then backing in, and then heaven forbid you don't get it the first time. And so I parallel parked. Then I had to figure out some app to pay for the 85 cents worth of parking. There was a homeless guy asking for money. And it's like, how do you tell a homeless guy you have no money when you're walking into Whole Foods? Like, this guy's got it figured out. And I mean, and I don't carry cash. So I was just like, I'm so sorry, brother. I wish you the best. I went in, and I start grabbing food for myself. And for whatever reason, especially after a moment, which I felt like they weren't being accommodating to me, and how selfish, my next thought was, what can I do for them? And so I really enjoyed my conversations with James that day. And I remember in our welcome call, he had mentioned his favorite, like, not great food for you was strawberry cheesecake. And I was like, well, I know they have a great, bakery at Whole Foods. I don't eat the stuff, but I do know it's good. So I went over to the bakery. They had regular cheesecake, no strawberries. And I was like, well, that's the strawberries make it. And right underneath it, they had strawberry shortcake. And I was like, okay, that's the second closest thing. So I got that. And then I was like, well, is there anybody else here that I remembered what they liked? And then Sam that was there, I remember she really loved chocolate chip cookies. And I know they were all gone from the first night. So I grabbed some chocolate chip cookies, checked out, made my way back to the house. James was in the kitchen with two others, Lisa and I think Kara. And I gave James the strawberry shortcake, which in some capacity I felt bad because I didn't have something for everybody. But at the same time, I also wanted people to feel seen. And so I gave it to him, and he ate it unapologetically, and I loved it. And he said it was good. And I was like, I'm sorry I didn't get you strawberry cheesecake. He's like, no, this is also a great. And I'm like, all right, good. And then Sam came into the kitchen. I was like, hey, have one of these. She thought that it was just the house. Like, that was already there. So she was like, oh, thank you so much. She ate it. And then the next morning she was like, oh my God, I did not know until Celeste said to me, did I want these just for myself or to share with other people, that you got these just for me? Thank you so much for being so thoughtful. And I was like, oh, it's no big deal. But it was it was interesting to take this very selfish thought, which was fuck these people for not thinking of me, to just going back to, you know, my normal self, which is more like I like giving and making people feel good. And although all that sounds great, there was also another incident that happened in that same moment that I'm not very proud of, that I wrote about. There was somebody there that in so many ways is much like the professional me. And she was talking about AI models, which you and I know tons and tons about.
Mm-hmm.
And I just sat and listened, and I made my food. And it was just all this. I can't think of another word other than braggadocious, although that may not have been the intent, but I just kept sitting here thinking, you know, you get so much of your affirmation based off of the accolades and things that you've done in life. And I was like, internally, I'm like, I feel so bad for you for having to think that that's the kind of stuff that you have to share with people in order to get their attention.
Hmm.
And for whatever reason, in that moment, I was like, yeah, you're just not my people either. And it wasn't until another experience later on that it happened that I completely reframed that thought and was very frustrated with myself. But it just it goes to show you that it's not like you walk in some house and all of a sudden you're this new person. No, you still carry all the same baggage.
Right. So it sounds like you went through a couple different
Uh-huh.
like where you were, I guess, that's the mirror we're talking about. Like you're face to face with, like, you know, the I guess the flaws, like the good and the bad and the ugly. It sounds like. So then what happened? So what's next? So, you know, what's the next thing that, because I know you had a lot of different moments in this this journey.
So we so I guess this was Friday evening. So I went to bed. And for what is seemingly a very exhaustive experience, I couldn't sleep. You know, I would lay there till like 1:30 in the morning most nights, and I just wasn't tired. My mind, and I wasn't going through this like, you know, all these crazy thoughts, or I just couldn't sleep. I was just there. And so I wake up Saturday morning, which was a hell of a day, and you know, I do my cardio again, but I tried to be a little bit more intentional this time when I was doing cardio. And I'd even made a comment here probably a week or so ago about, you know, when you go on a walk, at least by my house, it's very common for people to greet each other and say hi. Around our office, everyone is just glued to their phone and they look down at the ground and their shoulders are slumped and there's no eye contact. And it's just, you can see what everybody's doing, which is trying to do a good thing, but they just seem so closed off. And so while I was walking, and I was in a very, very liberal neighborhood, which is neither here nor there. It's just something that I had witnessed. And I'm very different. And so, and even somebody had made a comment to me later that if they saw me walking towards them, I would make them feel away. And I just know that's the reality. And so I passed some lady that morning on my walk and made it a point to, you know, good morning, how are you? And she just head down like, oh my God. She's got her dog with her, which, you know, I know is a security thing too, as much as we want to say like, oh, I like to take my dog on a walk. Yeah, that's cute. You're also doing it because you're afraid of the big bad wolf and the dog might get him. And so her and I ironically passed each other again about 20 minutes later. And this time she was actually open to saying hi. And she smiled. We made eye contact, which is a very unique experience I can touch on too at the retreat. And you could feel the connection, but it very fleeting. I mean, you'd pass each other and keep going. And I noticed on the walk too that, you know, as people got close, sometimes they would go out of their way to go to the other side of the road, whether they thought they were in the way or whatever it may, I don't know. And so there was just lots of these little things that I was noticing. So I finished my walk, eat, and we start our exercises, you know, again for the day. And then there was a very, it seems like easy exercise, but very uncomfortable. We were I don't remember what the context was. It was about connection, but we were to sit down with our partner, knee to knee, so close. And I'll never forget, Neil loves to wake people up. So he's like, I want you guys to be really, really close, but we're not making babies here. And so we're laughing. And so we sit down and he's like, the first part, I just want you to look into each other's eyes. And we're like, okay. And, you're like,
Awkward.
and, I instantly wanted to joke, which I know is a defense, thing. And so I was just like, okay, we're not doing that. And James took it very seriously. And so we're just literally just staring into each other's eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And you could almost feel, based off of how the other person blinked, their eye movement, everything, if they were trying to pull back or hide something, or, I mean, you just felt them. And so then we were challenged to pretend like the person across from you is somebody very, very important in your life that you love, and just speak to them in that manner, with regard to how much they mean to you. And I'm like, oh my God. All right. So I start doing this, and I knew this about myself, but man, did it show up. When I'm sharing something really, really, really deep or emotional, I have a really hard time making eye contact. Because if they go and look at their phone, if they check their watch, if they are dismissive in any capacity, for me, it's a sign of rejection. And so I was trying to make eye contact with him, but I kept averting it as I would say things that were very deep. And so we finish, and now it's James's turn, and he's like, this might be kind of awkward. I'm going to be talking to you like you're my wife. And I'm like, all right.
Great.
And so, and he just says the most vulnerable and loving things. And you could just tell, looking into his eyes, that he meant every ounce of what was coming out. And then even mentioned that, although we're very intentional with how we say goodbye and everything to each other, because you just never know, that basically he hadn't opened up this much like he knows he should have. And so we get finished, and it was just like, oh my gosh, this is so much. And, then we were asked, like, how did that make you feel? And James says, it made me feel like I want to be this person that Dustin was speaking about. And then, for James, I was like, man, it made me feel like I need to show up more like this as a husband for my own wife. And then he was like, okay, next part of the exercise, I want you to lock eyes. And then partner A, which was me, I want you to slowly look away and then hold that. And I'm like, okay, this is easy. So I look away, hold it. Instantly, I could hear James, like, he made this uneasy noise. And then I could just barely see, but also feel his body language had totally shifted. And then about a minute or two goes by, and then we switch. And then as he looked away, like the air just left me. And I was like, what? And then you're just staring at somebody who you just had this very deep conversation with, who was giving you absolutely zero attention. And it was almost like all of our safety was tethered to eye contact. And then as soon as the exercise was done, it was just like, oh my God. And so we ended up, and not prompted to, but, we give each other a hug, and, we go sit down in the room and we talk about this. And then we did, many exercises after the fact until we got to the grand finale. And it was just, it was so unique to just do something so simple and witness so many things that you potentially already knew about yourself, but also it really kind of put the cherry on top, that what all of us are really looking for so much. And it doesn't have to be intimate relationships. This could be a sales conversation. We're just looking to be seen, heard, and we're looking for connection.
Wow. That's deep. That's deep. So you guys, man, I mean, I know this is going to sound repetitive, but like, I just want you to kind of keep going on this journey. So then what? Cause I mean, there's just so much, like,
Yeah. So we broke for lunch. I ended up going to the gym at lunchtime, and I remember. Okay, well, let me back up just a little bit because this matters. So when we first got there were name tags.
Mm,
And I remember getting to the house, and I've always told myself I am terrible with remembering names.
mm,
While I was sitting in the car before I got in the house, I also remember telling myself, no, you are not bad at remembering people's names. You're actually great at remembering them. And we're going to remember everybody's name. So when we made our way in and then we were all told to grab these name tags, I'm like, oh, this is going to be so easy. Now I'll definitely remember everyone's name. Except we had to write down 3 words that we wanted to really lean into each day. And so now I can't remember everyone's names or, by their name tags. I truly had to remember them, which I did after the first night. I knew everybody's names, which I was, proud of myself for doing so. But then it was also a reminder that the things that we speak to ourselves, generally we will find. And we even, and Neil even made a comment through the journey that, if anybody says, I am this, those are very strong statements. And if it is a negative statement, ask them when they started believing that. And so that happened various times throughout the trip. So the second day, I don't remember what words I wrote down. I kept all these name tags and put them on various things, but consistently open or loose was something that I wrote down. I never used the words confident or anxious or anything like that. I was really just trying to lean into words that I wanted to feel. One of them was loved. One of them was marvelous one day. One of them was fucking beautiful one day, which was actually Sunday. But so Saturday, and based off the words I wrote down, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to lean into these words, and I'm going to lean into experiences, and I'm not going to lean into anxiety and all this other stuff that I would generally feel. So I say that to say that as I was going to the gym, I looked for recommendations in Indianapolis, and I got one that was hilarious. It was a women's only gym from an old friend of mine, and then another one was for a gym on the north end of Indianapolis, which I'm sure it would have been fine, but I was not going to drive 30 minutes one direction to a gym and then 30 minutes back plus an hour at the gym. I would have missed an hour of the day. So I found a gym like less than 2 miles away downtown called Indy City Barbell. And I saw the pictures online. I'm like, these are my people. Hell yeah. So, and shout out to Indy City Barbell for this. You could pay for your day pass online, download the app, get in and out for like seamlessly. And so I do all these things. I park where the GPS told me to park, which there's a part 2 to this, which is funny. So I park where the GPS tells me to park. I see a door. I get out of my car and I'm like, I'm going to go in this bitch like I own it. And I'm going to scan my thing, get my workout in, have a great day. So I open the door. There's 4 people that worked there in the gym, and I'm a weirdo. Like, I like to scope out new places. So I knew these people worked there because I saw on their About Us page. There was one other guy that was presumably buying a membership because that's what they were talking about. And I open the door. I walk right past them all, put my stuff down in my little cubby, and I go start working out. And I go into the powerlifting side, which was like 3/4 of one of these parcels. And then they had a bunch of free weights on one end. So that's where I stayed. And I was like, I'm not going to follow my normal program. I just want to do an upper body focused workout right now. High intensity, real low rest periods. And they said they had the AC on, but it was like 76 in there and it was stagnant. And so I was sweating like a whore in church at the gym. And the lighting was really good. And I had a cutoff shirt on. And I finally, at this point in 75 hard, have really started to see some dramatic change. So, man, I'm looking good. I'm fucking pouring sweat everywhere. And I could tell other people were also watching me. And I'm like, fuck yeah. Like this is what it's, I'm owning the room. I'm feeling it and I'm getting a great workout on. So I'm finishing up. I go to leave. I go back out the same direction that I came in, not paying attention to the gym as a whole. And I go to leave out the door. The door's locked. And I'm like, what the fuck? And one of the guys is sitting right there. He's like, oh, yeah, let me get that for you. And I'm like, no, I got it. So I unlock the door, walk out. And I'm like, that's super weird. I leave and go back to the house. Everyone's getting ready to start, connecting again. I've got to shower super quick because I'm not about to sit with this room with me being this damn sweaty after my 2 workouts were done. And then made my food and I sit down and just kind of, am with it. So we start going through some more exercises. And I thought the day, like it about 7:15 at this point. So I'm like, okay, we're wrapping shit up. Like, you know, we've had dinners at this point. You know, it's time to call it. So Neil says, hey guys, we have one more exercise to do tonight. I want you guys to hang out. I think we were in the kitchen for a little bit. And he's like, we got to get some stuff set up real quick. And then you guys will come with us. You're like, yeah, whatever. So comes and gets us. All the lights are off in the house. And he's like, you know, sit down. So I find my way to a seat. And there's this like little constellation light that you would like put in your kid's room, you know, casting stuff on the ceiling. And he's like, okay, so one thing I've noticed about you guys is a lot of you are really great at giving to other people. And I'm like, yeah, of course. Like that's, you know, as a business owner, that's a big part of what we do. And he's like, but on the flip side of that, a lot of you are really bad at receiving. And all of us are, for the most part, like, yep. And he goes, and what you may not have realized is that, and I'm paraphrasing, but when you are not good at receiving, that actually makes you a taker, because you are taking that feeling that somebody else is trying to get from giving you something away from them. And I was like, holy fuck. And I started thinking about all the times that my wife has gone, or other people have gone way out of their way to do something very meaningful, and how that's supposed to make them feel when they see you get to experience that. And I was like, well, fuck. No wonder people say I'm hard to buy for. Because they never see me experience what is good, bad, or indifferent. Well, damn, that makes me, I thought I was being very humble. And no, that's not the case. Well, fuck. So, and I'm like, where is this going? So then Neil goes, so you guys all had shared a couple of songs with us that are really meaningful to you. And so what we're going to do is we're going to stand up one at a time, go to the center of the room. You're going to relax, deep breaths, open up your arms, and we're going to play the music. And then as we're playing the music, everybody in the room, one at a time, is going to go up to you, open their arms, stare in your eyes, and say, I see you as. And just say as many things as they see you as, you know, through this exercise. And then you're just supposed to sit there and receive it. And I was like, oh, fuck. A, I don't know what people see me as. B, what? And so I'm like, all right, well, I'll get settled in. We're going to see a couple of other people go so I can kind of, you know what to expect. And Dustin, you're first. And I was like,
What?
Oh my gosh, no. Anybody else but me. All right, we're doing this. So I stand up, and we were prompted to send 2 to 3 songs that mean a lot to us. I sent 6 because and even 6 was hard. So then of those 6, they had to decipher which ones. And I'll be damned if they didn't just pick the 3 most gut-wrenching songs. And so the first one comes on, Human by Cody Johnson. And I'm like, oh, which for me, it really is like an anthem to my life, and how, I'm sure so many are like this too. Sometimes music and poetry and books and all that kind of stuff, they say things so much better than you even attempt to. And so you really just lean into what's already good. So, and I had shared this with my wife many moons ago. Basically, like, I'm sorry that this is how I've lived, you know, but at the end of the day, I'm still learning how to be human.
Yeah.
And so this comes on, dude, I'm fucking bawling. I'm shaking. And again, you're just supposed to receive. So then people start getting up one by one and saying, you know, all these beautiful things to you. These people hadn't known me but 48 hours at this point. And at one point, one person also mentioned at the very end, it's like, I see you as a friend. And I was like, oh my God. And then the videographer, who was not prompted to get up, also gets up and comes and says, and this guy is very young, very eloquent, though, all these amazingly nice things. It shifts to another Cody Johnson song, The Fall. And I'm like, oh my God, which is all about the journey of life and the highs and the lows and everything in between. And then the last song comes on, Superman by Morgan Wallen. And I'm just like, I can't take this anymore. I felt like I was up there for an hour. And then Neil comes up to me and starts whispering in my ear, just basically along the lines of the song. But, you're being Superman for everybody. And you've loved and you continue to love and you've given and continue to get, and you're doing all these things. But it's okay. You don't have to be Superman for everybody. You can just be you, and you've done enough. And, so he sits down and the song starts to wrap up, and you just sit there. And then eventually I, go and sit down, and then we just started going, through everybody. And there was one person in particular that I was really struggling to find words. And it was the lady the night prior that was speaking about AI models.
Mm-hmm.
And earlier that morning, she had shared a story, and I don't know how it came about, but she shared a story. So she is an interrogator,
Right.
or in her background, she was at some point, and she's worked in very male-dominated spaces. And there was a couple of comments through the process about really leaning into the woman that she is, and not, more of this manly avatar that she feels like she needs to be. So every word that was coming up in me was very geared towards what she portrayed.
Mm.
And I was like, that's not what she needs. And so in her story, she shared that there was another lady in her space that is a savage at interrogation. And there was a serial killer who was a psychopath. And she's like, psychopaths, they don't really experience any emotion. They just have massive egos. And so how they broke him was basically they just played into his ego of how great he was. And then finally, because he was so filled with how great he was like, oh, and by the way, this is where I hit all the bodies. And so, they were able to do what they needed to do. And I was like, that is the opposite of what she needs. She doesn't need to have her ego fed. She needs to have her soul fed.
Mm.
And so, I stood up and, I told her, I said, I see you as intelligent. She already knew that. And I was like, I see you as bold. I see you as something else. And then I was like, but I also see you as an amazing mother. And I also see you as somebody who is strong on the outside, but a beautiful soul on the inside. And then I just made it a point to just pause and stare into her eyes, and then water kind of glazed over them. And then she shook her head and she said, thank you. And then I went and sat down, and I was like, yeah, like that's what she needed. Mm-hmm. And you couldn't hear anything anybody else was saying and stuff. But so we're getting towards the end. It is like 10:15. So this has gone on for almost 3 hours. And so we're finishing, and then Josh in the group is like, Neil, I would like you to stand up. We would like to do this for you. And he's like, yeah, sure. And we're like, let's let the teacher be the student. And he's so great at practicing what he preaches. So, I mean, he's fully receiving. Like, I mean, he's crying, he's taking it all in. And, I remember going to him and much of the same. I'm like, I see you as an amazing father. I see you as a devoted husband. And I'm like, he knows these things. But I was like, I see you as an amazing gift from God. And I see you as a guardian angel. And, we wrapped everything up, and it was just so heavy. And in the moment, I'm like, I'm very hungry. I also don't want to get up and break what's going on here. And then it was about 11:45. And finally I like tap Neil, and I'm like, can I please go make something to eat? And he's like, yeah, there's no rules here. Go do what you want. And I'm like, oh. So I go eat, and we all kind of start to disperse. And then that night, it was about 1:30 again. And I'm, still laying there wide awake, because you're just filled with so much. Mm-hmm. And finally I was like, I need to rest, because I've got to work out and stuff tomorrow. So went to sleep, and I'll never forget, like 5:24, 5:25, I hear like, And I'm like, what the fuck was that? And it sounded like somebody put, like an artificial Christmas tree in a box and just launched it down the stairs.
Yeah.
And so I jolt out of bed, and then I hear this. I thought it was Allie screaming, "We've got to go." And so my instant thought was, there's a fire.
Mm-hmm.
And so I grab my shorts real quick. I go to put them on, damn near bust my ass, break out into the hallway, and I'm all the way on the top floor, all the way down at the end. And then I just hear nothing. I'm like, okay, this is weird. It's also 5:25. If I start walking around the house, everyone's going to hear me. I don't want to wake anybody up. I'm sure it's nothing. So I'm like, the house is also old and had a lot of crazy stories. So I'm like, maybe it's a spirit. Who knows? So I go back to sleep, wake up, make my way downstairs at a little bit before 8, and I see James and Kara in the living room, and they're like, hey, we got to tell you something. Neil fell last night. And I'm like, wait, what? And they're like, yeah, Neil had gone to the bathroom, apparently got lightheaded. We're not really sure what happened next, but he ended up falling down the 20 stairs from the second floor to the first floor. I found him. He was, just in a ball moaning. She's like, we got him up, got him in a chair. He said he was okay. And then he face planted. I'm like, oh my God. And she's like, so we called 911. The paramedics came. All this happened while we're sleeping. Wow. And the paramedics came, and he's at the hospital right now. His wife's with him. And we're not really sure what's going to happen today, but just wanted to let you know. And I'm like, did this happen around like 5:30 this morning? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, oh my God. Wow. And I'm like, man, this guy that has been building this, this zone of like safety and connection and holding everybody up fell. And I even remember that night thinking, like, I haven't seen him drink a lot of water. I've not seen him eating very much. Like, his blood sugar had to be wildly low. He was tired. And when I went to bed at 1:30, he was still awake, which is not like him. Mm-hmm. And so it's just like, okay. So I went and did my walk, and I came back, and then we did, the group did a great job. One of the people there, Jessica, she led this grounding exercise first thing in the morning, which we all did outside, which was very funny because, you've got a whole bunch of strangers at a house that is, probably haunted. No, not lived in at the time. We had made a joke that most people won't understand this and think that we're in a cult. Apparently the paramedics kept asking Neil if he was safe and what was going on in the house. And then Neil had made some point like, you guys are like my army. I'm like, now we sound like a real cult. And so we're out in the front on this massive patio, doing these exercises in the morning. People are walking by. I'm like, oh my God, they really think we got some crazy shit going on over here. And then we finish and we go back inside, and then, we get I think Kara may have got a message, or Celeste got a message that, Neil was out of the hospital. Okay. Other than some, bruises and whatnot. And he was headed back. And I'm like, what? Okay.
Sure.
Yeah. And then, and then the last full day started.
Man. So when you find out that he fell down the stairs, what a turn of events. Yeah. What were you feeling in that moment?
Just sadness. This sounds selfish, but it was like, there was high anticipation for what the last day was going to be like. And it was like, okay, everything just had to pivot on a dime. So now where do we go from here? Because this isn't over. This isn't it. But also, okay. And, in the same capacity, sadness for him and his wife to, have to him go through the physical experience of that, her to have to go through the, chaotic experience of wake up, your husband's in the hospital.
Right.
And so it was a lot. And so, when he came back, his lovely wife, Brandy, helped him get upstairs. He got ready real quick and he came down, and it was something very unique that he did that I think is very important for everybody. Instead of just jumping right back in and acting like nothing happened, he's like, no, guys, I want to clear the room. And he's like, I think this is very important for you guys to do in your lives as well, because if you truly, love somebody and have a foundation of trust with them, you should have these conversations. So, and he gave a backstory to it of a unique experience that he had, but he said, basically, this is what happened. This is what I remember. This is why it happened. And, this is what the doctors told me, but I'm here. And I just want us all to be on the same page before we move forward. And I was just like, wow, that's like, how often in life does something happen and you just bury it and move on versus clear the air? And so, we cleared the air. We started the last day. The last day was supposed to be a little bit more intimate with the one-on-ones, but a lot of the mastermind folks, stayed behind as well, which was nice to kind of continue on, some of that conversation with them. And, and we transitioned a little bit from, the deep personal inner work to some more business related conversation. Where is your business struggling? What's the biggest problem you're having right now? And then we all had the opportunity to speak into them. And for me, it was from a professional standpoint, but also deeply intrinsic. It was something that really filled my cup because I love hearing where there's opportunity in businesses and how to solve it. So, as everybody was just kind of going one by one, it was just a million light bulb moments for me to pour into people. And I didn't realize how impactful it was for other people until later on that evening and then subsequent days, where, Neil had shared with me a lot of people's thoughts. People were reaching out one-on-one, being thankful for, words of wisdom, potentially foolishness, but that, that I had poured into them and wanting to continue to keep that connection and understand, what I was working on.
Yeah. Yeah. So then the last day comes in. So tell me about that. So it was more, so you're saying the last day was more like business conversations and things like that. So then do you feel like, so let's transition to the leaving, right? First question I have for you, if the house could talk, what would it say about who you were before you came into that house and then when you walked out versus when you walked out and left?
Probably timid, shy, withholding, anxious, even though I thought I wasn't, reserved, all words in alignment with that. God, and walking out, seen, heard, understood, valued, cared for, loved, blossoming, all that type of stuff.
Yeah. Do you feel like you left anything behind at that house?
I don't know if I could say I left anything behind at the house. What I was so sad about was, again, back to that phrase, utopia. On my last walk that I did there, I was just like, fuck. We're all about to go different directions. We're all about to go right back into the world. And this was so magical. And that was the thing that I was just like, man, it was so challenging to know that, in some capacity, the end is near.
Yeah. And so I guess that's in line with my next question. So you leave the house. What's been the hardest part about coming back to reality? Like, you're stepping back into life after such a powerful experience for you. What does that look like? What's hard?
Yeah. So, I think the hardest thing is that we're such creatures of habit, and we're so ingrained in a lesson that I learned there, unfortunately the hard way, which is a lot of times we do what is familiar and a lot of times we do what is familiar and confuse it with what is fulfilling. And so, and even through the process, there was a question about what are we confusing as fulfilling that is just familiar. And I wrote down 75 hard. It was the first thing I wrote down. I'm like, I do this as a catalyst for change, but I do it because the idea is that it is going to be fulfilling. And in some capacity it is, but it's also just super familiar, which is why I continue to do it. It's not hard at this point. It's just familiar. And I've done it so many times that I'm like, oh, I'll just check enough boxes and then, I'll recreate this environment. But what it really comes down to is alignment and then the integration consistently over time. And so as I was really loving this grounding moment and being with people and all of that, I knew that once I put myself back in an environment, which was work and home and friends and all that, they didn't have this experience. So for me to be completely anew was going to be a challenge for them as well.
Mm-hmm.
And also people want to know what happened and what's going on and how do I explain this 50 times. Because, and I hate to say this, but this is the reality. When you say, hey, how are you? Or, hey, how was it? What most people are wanting in return is a 30-second, if not less, response. They don't really want to know.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a challenge for me. Like, how do I take this and encapsulate it in something that is palatable and it's shared the same every time,
Mm-hmm.
so that people can get the real experience should they want it or not? And then what I ended up doing with that.
Right.
And then it was also like, I haven't really talked to my wife much in 5 days. She's ready for me to be home and be right back at it. I'm not ready for that. I'm ready to be home. I'm not ready to be right back at it. And so, one of the challenges, whether it be something like this or when you go on these masterminds and these conferences, we all are obsessed with this idea of we need more information. We need more tools. And then what the fuck do you do with it?
Mm-hmm.
I need to read. I've done that. I'm going to read 24 books this year. Great. Like, how many of them did you actually integrate, or did you just buy 24 more books and read the words?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm reading a book right now for the 4th time because I'm really trying to take things that I perceive have very high value and integrate them into my life, because without the integration, the fucking knowledge doesn't matter.
Right.
And so my thought was, well, I didn't really work much Thursday. I didn't work Friday. I didn't work Saturday and Sunday. I damn near didn't reset these credentials that I needed to until 1:30 in the morning on Monday. I needed to get right back into it. And I looked at my calendar on Tuesday and I was like, okay, I have no must-haves on here. Maybe I just need to rest.
Mm.
And maybe I just need to sit with this. Maybe I need to write down my thoughts. Maybe I need to really just lean in and practice this stuff and find out how I can do this consistently through time. And so took Tuesday off. I did some stuff here and there, but I made it a point. Like, if I saw an email that I knew was going to have to take some unpacking, or if I potentially thought there was a negative thread there, like I didn't even look at them.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. Like, the world's not going to fucking end by not answering an email. And yeah, so I went to the gym. I spent about half the day writing. I intentionally isolated myself just so that I could kind of integrate and then B, slowly figure out what the next couple of days and the transition out was going to look like.
I want to take one step back because I want you to tell me. I think this would be fun because I know this, but I think it'd be funny for the audience to know. You talked about how you went in the gym.
Oh God,
when you were there, right? And you and I kind of want to relate this back to like the beginning of your trip when you pulled in, and you saw Allie just kind of walk into the
Yep.
spot, and she owned it. You was like, man, if I could only be like that. Bring me back to that gym moment.
Yeah.
What did you figure out the next day?
So Sunday, for whatever reason, when I left the gym Saturday, a lot of gyms do not have staff on Sundays.
Mm-hmm.
And most of them don't allow for walk-ins and that kind of stuff. But I was like, I can buy the day pass online and it's got this Bluetooth reader, but I didn't see a Bluetooth thing on the door.
Mm-hmm.
So I pull back up to the gym and I've only got so much time. And I even asked Celeste, I was like, hey, I know this is maybe a lot to ask, but because I have so limited time today, can you make my lunch for me?
Mm-hmm.
Here's how easy it is to do. And Celeste, more than gracious, and I'm so thankful, was like, yep, just text me when you're on your way back. I'll have it ready for you. So I get back to the gym. One thing I didn't anticipate was the Colts were playing that day, and we're also downtown. So there are cars parked everywhere up and down the road. But I make it in the parking lot just fine. I get out of the car, and the words that I wore that day were beautiful, marvelous, and loose. And I'm like, I'm going to go in this gym and I'm just going to feel it. And I'm just going to go with the flow. Well, the fucking door's locked. And I'm like, no, this is not according to plan. Pre-workout is at full tilt. It's time to go. I have training shoes on, which are not walking shoes. I am not going on another walk. I am training today. And then I was like, well, there's a park in front of me. I can do plyometrics and shit in front of people. That's going to be awkward as hell for me. I don't want to do that. And so I sat back in the car and I'm like, I'm getting in this damn gym. Believe it or not, I don't like talking on the phone. And so, but I call the gym, it goes to voicemail. I'm like, no. I call again, it goes to voicemail. I'm like, oh my God. So I go online. I can't see anything about not being able to get into the gym on Sunday. I'm like, oh my God. Then I'm looking at their Google business profile and I'm like, this is not what the gym looks like on the outside, but this is definitely the gym because that is the inside. And I'm like, no, we're doing this. So I get out of my car. I'm like, I'm just going to walk around the block and then I'll figure something. I'll see somebody going in. So I start walking past the door and there's no thing there for the reader or whatever. And so I keep walking. Then I like look over my shoulder again. I see a guy go in the office and it's a glass door. So I'm like, oh shit. So I turn around, I'm like waving my arms at him, which also like, I don't like to draw a lot of attention to myself, but I'm like, I'm getting in this damn gym. So the guy comes to the door, he unlocks the door, he opens the door. He's like, hey man, are you here to lift? And I'm wearing a shirt, my Weak Things break shirt. And I'm like, clearly. And I was like, hey, I'm trying to get in and I can't find the thing to scan my pass. And he's like, oh yeah, you're the guy that came yesterday through this door. And he's like, you just seem like you own the place and walk straight through. So we didn't say anything to you. But yeah, this is the back door. This is where the staff comes through. The front door is in the front of the building by the parking lot. And I'm like, what? Oh. And so he checks me in real quick and he's like, yeah, man, enjoy your lift. And I just laughed because normal me would have averted and just went to plan B and been pissed off about plan B. Mm-hmm. I stuck with it and I got to do what I wanted to do. And I also got to laugh at myself for not finding the front entrance, which I ended up obviously going out of when I left. But what's unique about that and another exercise that we did, which is something that's very powerful to anyone that's still listening to this. So we did this exercise where it was this game, you rolled these die and there were like 16 die and they had all these different symbols or like icons on them. And all you had to do is basically improv a story. So you picked up a die and if it was a parachute and you're like, you just, whatever the fuck came to mind, like, oh I decided to go on a vacation with my wife and we wanted to go parachuting. And then you grab the next die and you just continue the story. And most people were pretty good through half of the die because you were grabbing what looked familiar. The last 25 to 50% was the unfamiliar. And some people, I mean, the stories just were ridiculous at best, mine included. And then some really struggled on the last 10%. But everybody made it through. And the last person to go, Neil separated the die, like 4 of them from the other 12 and said, guys, this is life. Like, this is business. For so many of you, you stop when things start to get challenging. In the end, that promised land, that satisfaction, what you're looking for is that chasm from what is familiar to what is unfamiliar to the finish line. And sometimes you just got to keep going. And as unique as that is and special and interesting, yeah, my gym experience was that. The whole experience was that. Business and life is that. It's not, and we learned this with Miles, the A, B, and C zone. Yeah. That B zone, that unfamiliar, what do so many people do? When it gets tough, when it gets hard, they don't lean into resiliency. They look for the next shiny object and opportunity. Yeah. And they stay in this endless loop. But the real winners are the ones that can sit in that discomfort and keep pushing and pushing and pushing, even when they don't see the end in sight. And then they finally, slowly start to get there. And then that's where all the glory is. Yeah,
that's good, man. So after, after this experience, what are some promises? What are some promises that you're making to yourself moving forward, coming out of the weekend?
Oh boy. One is being really intentional about my energy and my internal thoughts, my beliefs that follow that. So that's just one very big but also seemingly small thing that I'm working on. 2 is really trying to show up to be what people need. Whether it be in my family, here, on a discovery call, whatever that is, people really just want to be seen and heard, and they want to be connected with. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
If you can do that really, really well, I'll be damned, you can accomplish a lot. The other thing that we really leaned into was that your life and your business aren't lacking resources. They're not lacking more revenue. They're not even lacking, in most cases, a bigger network. They're just lacking a true internal alignment with what it said, what you say you want, and what your beliefs are, and then actions that follow to get you there. That's the majority of it. We know, I need a better marketing agency. I need a better funnel. And in some cases, yeah, maybe you do. But in a lot of cases, we're so willing to outsource all this stuff to other people and bet on them that they're going to help us get to the promised land. And we truly don't even believe in it.
Yep. That's good. So just looking back, because I know we've talked for a while, but what's one thing that, for someone that's listening to this that has that maybe it's pulling on their heartstrings, what's one thing that you kind of want to impart to all these business owners that'll be listening to us here? What's one takeaway that you want them to have?
That this probably sounds like a bunch of rah-rah woo-woo shit. In some respect, there may be a little bit of that there, but I think the real reality is if you're navigating through life and you feel in any capacity like I did, which was that you were just continuing to relive the same loop over and over and over again. It may be a different business, it may be another marriage, it may be how you interact with your kids, it may be, God, literally anything, but you just keep seeing the same patterns like I did. That you're not broken. You're not some washed up thing that's just the reality of the life that you're always going to live. There is a light at the end of the tunnel, but you've got to find a guide. And then you have to do the work. You have to find somebody that you trust to be that mirror that shows you how great you actually are, and then lean into giving yourself some fucking grace, which so many of us struggle with, and then do the work. And then if you can find that guide and you do the work, all of a sudden all these things that you think you wanted become less important, and then you can really dial in on the things that really make you feel wealthy.
Yeah. Good stuff, man. All right. Now I want to end this off with our fun lightning hot seat round. So I'm going to give you some rapid fire questions to end on. 5-second answers max. Ooh. So let's go. Stillness or movement, which teaches you more?
Stillness.
One word that sums up what Woodruff Place gave you.
Belief.
Old Dustin versus new Dustin. Who wins the debate?
New.
Would you rather grow fast or grow aligned?
Aligned.
When you feel out of alignment again, what's the first thing you'll do?
Oof. Sabotage.
Most overrated self-help cliche.
You just got to do more.
The most underrated daily habit. What is it?
Stillness.
If that house could send you one reminder text every morning, what would it say?
It would just, what would it say? Be who that 5-year-old needs.
Man, I love that. I think every entrepreneur has their own Woodruff Place moment waiting. It just probably looks a little bit different for each of us. And if this if this talk had any impact or value to you guys, just feel free to like, comment, subscribe. But I appreciate you guys taking some time to listen to us today and listen to Dustin's amazing experience. Anyway, guys, I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to us today. Life by the Horns, we're out. Peace.